Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. And to those observing the meeting on Microsoft Teams. Fire alarm procedure. No fire drills are expected this evening. So in the event of the alarm sounding, please wait to make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room, which is being used to vacate. You can all switch mobile phones on, please. Take any calls outside the meeting room. Do not leave any possessions unoccupied. Report any unoccupied possessions. Remember to take any possessions with you when the meeting has concluded as you leave the meeting. This meeting will be subject to filming or audio recording by us in accordance with the council's filming protocol. And anyone who remains at the meeting following this announcement will indeed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Apologies have been received from Councillor Wetton. Councillor Abs will be substituting for Councillor Wetton.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest?
Chair, I'm the ward councillor for item 6, and I'm also a member of Friends of Mansfield Cemetery.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 26th of May. Do I have a proposer and a second, please? Councillor Cox and Councillor Stevenson. Can we put this to the vote? All members present, if they can vote, please. Yeah, it's Julie. Minutes from the last meeting. Can we have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the Planning Applications Committee held on the 20th of July to confirm the minutes as a correct record? Councillor Callaghan. And
No,
that's me. This is the last meeting. This is for the 20th of July. Previous one was the meeting held on 26th of May. Vote for that one, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda, planning application reference 2024 0717. Proposed indoor training football pitch. With an outside football pitch with lighting, sports hall, changing room, gym, building, and associated parking provisions. Land off Woburn Planning Council. Need to advise everyone that Bill Claire Cook will not be advising on this application due to personal reasons. The report will be presented by Dan Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. So just before I go into the main presentation itself, there are quite a few updates, mainly to the main reason to there were 2 late comments, but then there's been an update to the National Planning Policy Framework. So it's not it won't be sort of like it's not going to be a lecture on the whole change, but they've remodeled the order of the paragraphs quite substantially, and there's wording changes. So I'll go through where the report makes reference to a relevant section or paragraph of national policy. I will just provide a brief overview of the relevant policies and just what, broadly speaking, where they fall. So just to broadly summarise the 2 late comments that have been received, they're both public comments. For the most part, they don't raise any new comments which either haven't been raised already or that what the report doesn't consider. It's important to note one of them was anonymous, so I don't know broadly where they were located in relation to the site. Again, broadly speaking, the comments raised were either not material to the planning decision, so matters relating to property values, for instance. There were 2 there are some bits that I picked up that the report doesn't broadly, the highways are set, so it's broadly in relation to parking, residential access and emergency vehicles. So my report broadly looks at matters relating to highway safety and cumulative impact on highway networks, public transport more broadly. It didn't broadly touch on matters relating to the obstruction of private driveways. So in broad terms, there was concern about the obstruction of access on from residents entering and leaving their own driveways, or the resident that made the objection. As a general principle, when you were looking at whether someone's driveway is obstructed, most people will know if someone obstructs your driveway, it's generally a civil matter. So we can only, in planning terms, we can only assess that as far as it's material to the planning decision itself. So that would be in terms of highway safety, levels of parking, cumulative impact, which the report does discuss. It just doesn't explicitly deal with that. In terms of emergency vehicles, again, it's broadly the same. As far as the development relates to highway safety parking provision, it's material, but beyond that, it's mainly falls to parking enforcement in terms of antisocial parking. Again, the report kind of deals with the overall planning balance, as does the response from the Highway Authority in that respect. Obviously matters related, I did briefly note that obviously there is in terms of the development that's proposed, the report does talk about numbers of parking spaces proposed, the continued use agreements of the main parking of the school car park that's made use of by the school currently, and the fact that the use there is as part of the sale, the school does retain use of the car park, all of which are relevant to the application. So that's late for late comments. As far as national policy is relevant to the proposal, there's been, so the August 2026 NPPF was only released within, I think it was last Monday, to my recollection. It moves away from paragraph numbers and groups. It moves towards a more rules-based system. So it groups into relevant sections much more coherently, and there's also much more interconnection between various points. So it references policy references. So the way that it allows for the local plan has things like policy P2, P7, S1, S2, S3. It does the same thing. So rather than just saying, say, paragraph, so like presumption in favour of sustainable development, that's formerly paragraph 11, that's now replaced by policy S3 and S4, which relate to the presumption and development within settlements. And there's a greater emphasis on approving development unless harms significantly and demonstrably outweighed, or significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. I referenced in the principle of development, paragraph 85, which relates to businesses and encouraging investment. That's now replaced by policy E2, which is much more specific towards commercial development. So the reference in that section should really emphasize that there's temporary economic benefits associated with the construction of the building itself, and then long-term maintenance. As far as visual amenity and placemaking, there's not a direct paragraph, but that was formerly, would say, section 12. And Bill, sorry, do you mind just coming and entering your password briefly? Because it's a secondary piece for the presentation. So that's policy DP3 and DP4, which would formerly have been section 12 relating to design. Paragraph 135F, that relates to residential amenity, that's replaced now by policy P3, P4, and P5. That broadly, again, a residential amenity, so noise disturbance, external artificial lighting, crime, security, that replaces paragraph what would broadly have previously been paragraph 135. That's replaced by P3. Again, same thing again, paragraph 96, 115, 116, a reference in the report that relates to highway safety and healthy places. That's highway safety, that's replaced by TR3, TR4, TR6. Paragraphs 193, 197 related to biodiversity, replaced by N2 and N6. Flood risk in turn is F7, F8, flood risk, climate change is CC2 and CC3. They're also broadly the same as local plan policy, so it's does well confusing people. And then, so despite the changes, the overall assessment in terms of the actual balance of material considerations broadly remains the same. So the officer recommendation is still to grant planning permission with conditions. I think the main thing that members is mainly to advise going forward. There will be more. There's the national policies, or they're called national decision-making policies, and they're much more grouped around themes in the way that the local planners. So that's just to avoid confusion. So that's as far as member updates go. So if I just go to the main presentation, so I'll just be controlling the slides as well. So the broad description of development itself. So it's described as, so it's a new residential or recreational development. So it encompasses a new indoor training pitch, a new outdoor training pitch, a sports hall with a gym. There's new flood lighting, landscaping, access and parking. So that's on land to, as you can see on the site location plan, it's on land in the northwest of Mansfield, adjacent to Plesley Hill, to the east of Chesterfield Road North, and it's land to the southwest of Woburn Road and Woburn Lane. So as you can see, it's land use is broadly mixed as residential development, primarily to the south, east, and to the northwest and southwest, with the cemetery also to the southwest. To the north and northeast, it's mixed. There's rural land characterises the site, but also within the existing Mansfield Town Football Academy, which is relevant to the proposal because it's also within the ownership of the applicant. So broadly speaking, this slide shows the overall site layout. So just if I just sort of, I'll just use the cursor. So it's sort of unfortunately it's inverted. So Woburn Road, Woburn Lane broadly follow just where I'm just sort of moving the cursor to now. So in terms of the actual layout, so there's this. So the overall size of the pitch is probably 2 hectares, which is about 5.4 acres. The actual size of it broadly, it's easy to sort of or overstate what actually being proposed here. So there's effectively 3 elements. So you've got this northern section here. So there's going to be a new car park proposed off the northern portion of the site. That's adjacent to these houses here. Just for context. So there'll be a new car park coming off that section of the site that contains 30 spaces, which will then lead to a gym and a sports hall primarily for training for the football players themselves. It's not proposed to be like a commercial sports hall or gym in itself. That's for the main players. You've then got the largest pitch, which is approximately 6,000 square meters. This is only one pitch, but it's effectively a full-sized training pitch. So it's like a full 11 by 11 pitch, which would be comparable to what you'd expect from a normal sort of League One, League Two side. And then you've got a further indoor training pitch again, which is maybe roughly 3/4 size. So the overall development is actually only it's mainly 2 training pitches. That's relevant in terms of when we've assessed the relevant impacts of the development itself. You've then got this car park, which has been a focus of some of the comments because it's currently I don't have a satellite image unfortunately, but it's used by Farmillow Primary School. They have sufficient parking on their site largely for the staff themselves, but there is a provision that I think my understanding is during pick-up and drop-off times, the school has a right to use that parking area as for their own use. That as part of the current landowner is Nottinghamshire County Council, a provision of the sale agreement is that the school, as part of that sale, the football club will be able to use that parking area. But there is a provision that I think it's the agreement runs until 2053 that the school will retain use of that site for parking and pick up and drop off. So that arrangement would remain. Obviously, there is the contention that obviously that the football club will be able to use it. But as far as the balance of the so just obviously the school day runs from approximately sort of pick up time 8:30 to 4:30 would be general school hours. The football club obviously has a much more expansive operation, but you would expect, and this is supported by the transport statement and the local highway authority, that's a way to put it, the heaviest period of use in terms of games and training would be in the evenings. So they would be primarily non-overlapping in terms of intensity. So whilst there would be a joint use, it would, again, broadly speaking, wouldn't be expected to be substantial. And outside of school pickup and drop-off times, if you look, basically when I looked at almost every historic image I could find, there isn't the occupation of the car park outside, which I presume to be outside of school hours, is less than 5% of the total area available. the bigger point as well, I would also add about and this is again picked up in the transport statement, which was done by a highways consultant and as reviewed by the Highway Authority. This is currently it's not a formally arranged car park, so it's effectively like what I describe sort of like a dirt track, not a dirt track, but like it's unvegetated, sort of informal. There's no parking spaces delineated. So as part of the redevelopment, there would be 70 spaces that would be formally marked out. So in the assessment of parking provision, although it's not a new car park, the principle is that it would be much more efficiently used because you're not just having people going onto the site informally parking. If you get one group of cars during a layout when there's a football match on, if they park inefficiently, that then sets a precedent for the rest of the site. So the parking effectively is not increasing in area, but it's increasing in efficiency because you're actually telling people where to park rather than just everyone guessing. And then there's also space for the coach. So 70 spaces plus a coach space. I would also add that each space also has its own disabled parking provision. Overall, there's no objection from the Highway Authority, and the transport statement broadly supports that the overall use wouldn't be unacceptable. So this next slide is broadly the same. It just shows where the landscaping is. So this kind of gets into sort of, it's a mixture of biodiversity, biodiversity net gain considerations, landscaping, visual amenity. I would add, just as a general principle, that the main purpose of the sports club is more of to boost training offering that Mansfield Town offer. I would distinguish this from the existing training facilities. I think if there's some of the images that I think were in some of the, I don't know whether they're public or not, but some of the, if you look at the existing training provision, I think there are something like 5 to 7 training pitches, but they're smaller size, more like 5-a-side, so that you would anticipate the community use to be higher. Sport England in their consultation response haven't sought a formal community use agreement. It doesn't rule out that there wouldn't be any community use, but I would, because a lot of it's subject to funding from the Football League, it's much more about training quality as much as training amount or public use. So that's really why there's only 2 pitches proposed, as opposed to it being like a whole. Because if you laid these out as 5-a-side pitches, you could assume they'd be able to fit 4 or 5 in, maybe more, whereas there's only 2 in this case. So landscaping, as far as anything really, they've obviously you're introducing quite a significant amount of built development onto the site. So the opportunity for landscaping is limited. It's mostly comprised of mixed shrubbery along the western boundary here, native modified grassland, and then retained hedgerows and more shrubs on this eastern boundary, which is at the bottom of the image. There is a landscaping condition, so when we come to discharge that condition, we will look to try and encourage more tree planting along that western boundary to reduce the wider visual impact, but obviously noting that there are site constraints. So I'll talk about more about that in the elevations. So as I sort of mentioned in the opening, there's primarily 3 elements, 2 of which are buildings, 1 of which is an outdoor training pitch. So there isn't any, obviously it's not really a building, there is lighting, which I will touch on in the next slide. The actual appearance is fairly typical of what you'd expect from like an indoor training pitch or sports hall. The footprint is large, that there's no getting around that really. 4,000 square meters is acknowledged in the report as being substantial. The mitigating factor is really the height. It's only comparable to that of a 2-story dwelling. So it's in terms of sort of the footprint really, obviously it's to note the fact it's a sports hall, but it's mitigated by the vertical profile being again roughly 2 stories. So in terms of it would be footprint wise, it would be much bigger than what you would expect from a normal sort of like residential development, but that's mitigated by on-site landscaping plus the actual height being reduced. And we will look to sort of secure landscaping wherever possible. Materials match Mansfield Town's appearance, and that's subject to a planning condition. There are other elements of the design which aren't shown here. So things like solar panels, low carbon heating, fabric first design approach, that's proposed to be conditioned because the applicants made a sort of a bit deal of that in their submitted documents, but we would want further detail on that to be sort of a material benefit of the scheme in terms of sort of design being baked in terms of sustainability. I can talk about that any more in questions if needed. This just shows again, this is the same building, but the footprint, mainly almost all taken up by the actual football area itself. Again, sort of what I'd call a 3/4 size in terms of the actual footprint. But again, or maybe it's not as big as the main pitch, and we've got ancillary office functions. The actual another bit to kind of pick up on the applicant, when I questioned them on like with the amount of employment that would be proposed, they didn't give me a formal number, but I think again they're not proposing a substantial increase in employment, mainly because it would be placed on existing employees in Mansfield Town. Obviously there will be people that's necessary cleaning maintenance, but as far as actual employment, it's not like there's, as a result of this, there will be 50 new jobs created. It's mainly focused on the training quality provision from the evidence that I've seen. This is if you recall from the, again, I can go back to any of these slides in questions if needed. This is just the sports hall and the gym. So the actual footprint of this is much smaller. There's a 2-story element here, which again is broadly the same height as the building I just showed you, but it's much smaller in footprint. Maybe the whole thing is a few hundred square meters as opposed to a few thousand. It's on Norman boundary. For privacy reasons, because this is adjacent to a dwelling, we've conditioned quite a specific restriction on these fire doors to ensure that they can't be used just as general opening and closing during like normal training. They're for fire escape only, not for just a free-for-all for people to leave. So the expectation by that condition would be to demonstrate that they can't just walk out onto effectively facing somebody's garden. Although there is an apparent use of that. I'm not 100% sure what it is because I couldn't find any record, but it is already in use as what looks to be caravan storage of some kind, which that's already quasi-commercial in its own right. But that is a sort of a factor. It's not like there's a huge cluster of residential dwellings sitting on the edge of it. It's a fairly large plot which has already got some commercial activity on it when we're assessing amenity. So this is broadly speaking. So some of the representations did raise concerns of noise, lighting, amenity in general. So there's some fairly detailed conditions in the report. So obviously there's no real hiding it. The biggest structure on the outdoor pitch by far is the actual lighting columns themselves. As visual impact goes, they are, despite being 18 meters tall and the tallest structures, obviously the only real, it's largely point source. They're not going to be super visible in the actual column itself because it's barely, it's less than a meter wide. The main bit is the main lighting column, which I think is around 4 meters in width. The representations have quite rightly raised concerns relating to external lighting. That's a condition. So we've got a condition recommending, because they've not really put in any details of lighting design. So it's full contour design, luminance, operations. Obviously there's operating hours, but the main thing that we focused on was, because obviously during the day it can get dark at 4 o'clock. So rather than like thinking they must be switched off by a certain time, it's more focusing on the actual design to ensure that basically the floodlights are lighting the pitch rather than lighting up everyone else's bedrooms as a general principle. So that's detailed design is to be secured at condition stage. There's no objection from environmental health in terms of like, obviously they have their own statutory nuisance powers. And then also in terms of noise, the application was supported by a noise impact assessment that modelled relevant receptors that didn't support the fact that there would be any unacceptable impact in terms of noise or disturbance to local residents. So that technical evidence has also been reviewed by environmental health, who didn't raise an objection. Also noting they have their own statutory nuisance powers. There's also a condition on means of enclosure, so that effectively boundary walls and any sort of fencing around the edge of the site. Part of that is to preserve, obviously, the adjoining property to the northwest. We want to know what means of enclosure they're proposing, mainly for the privacy of the adjoining residents, but it's also to ensure that there's not, like along the main eastern boundary, that there's not anything sort of imposing on local residents when they're sort of viewing it from the street. So the next few slides, I think that covers as far as most of the technical sort of material considerations. Obviously, all the conditions cover things like flooding and drainage. That's covered by condition. There's no objections from flood authority. As far as our technical evidence base is covered, we don't have any objections in that regard. So these photos just provide the site context. This slide, there's a few slides showing this is the first car park which I alluded to that the school currently has use of. As I said, a condition of that sale is that they will be able to maintain that for use primarily for pick up and drop off times. But the bit I would point to, as I said previously, is that there's no formal delineation, so that there's no parking spaces shown. So basically, it's if that's ever used inefficiently, that would you end up with spillage, which I suspect is what a lot of the people are talking about with on-street parking at the moment. Is that this is if you get if one person parks poorly, that effectively could obstruct maybe a quarter of the spaces, which then means that you then get people have to respond to inefficient parking use, whereas now you can get 70 spaces on there to accommodate 70 cars. That's the principle. In general parking terms as well, there's obviously the parking spaces on the existing academy. So when you take all the spaces available to Mansfield Town as a total, there's 235, which has been assessed by Highways as being sufficient, noting that these are also available for the school. These are just photos just to give a sense as to the local highway context. There's not any great deal of assessment available here. There's already some traffic calming measures in place. Highways haven't requested any more. This is further up, so adjacent to the existing academy already. Most of the residential dwellings are further over that way, although there is the small cluster further to the northwest, where you sort of have the end of the public highway and the beginning of a private road. I would note that there are obviously comments about on-street parking. At least on this portion, there are traffic regulation orders in form of double yellow lines in place, which would be a matter for, if there is nuisance parking further up, that would be a matter for Notts Highways to control, at least in the portions they're able to. This is just looking within, these photos are just looking within the site. So predominantly classified as just sort of grasslands, the predominant habitat. Our ecologist has reviewed the sort of technical evidence as far as biodiversity protected species go. Biodiversity net gain is achieved with a mix of on-site and off-site. Some off-site mitigation is required, landscaping is done where possible. We had an updated ecological survey was done, I think in the last month or so, that didn't identify sort of any significant potential for protected species. We've looked to secure landscaping where we can, but as far as biodiversity impacts, nothing in terms of protected species and generally speaking, unacceptable harm is avoided in that context. Again, just more of the same really. This is looking down further up the same photo as I showed you before. So looking down the lane, that's the location of the what would be the new car park. So there'd be a net. So obviously that's put partly to accommodate.
Excuse me now. Can we silent at the back of the room, please? So we don't get present the reports and members. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Jazz. So yeah, just final couple of points really. This is the location of the second access. So the bit I said about and where the sports hall would be broadly here, further in that bit. So we wanted details of boundary treatments going down there. So there'll be a net gain of 30 spaces in per parking terms for the new car park, plus then there's the reorientation, or there's the formal laying out of the existing car park. Again, these images just show the site from sort of the photos within. Same again. This is again just more of what was my point really about the existing car park is again as you can see it's laid out, but it's got half standing, but there's no formal arrangement. That's brought here.
Thank you for your report and being quite brief tonight. We've got two public speakers. The first one is David Henwood. If I can invite him to the podium, please. Thank you, David. You've got 4 minutes.
Speaker.
Yeah. Press the big one.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you without it, yeah.
What?
You don't need the mic. I've made a recording.
Which one?
The big one at the bottom.
Middle one?
Yeah, the middle one, yeah. The big one there.
Can you hear me now?
We can certainly hear you, David, yeah. You've got 4 minutes. On you.
Press middle button.
Sure.
Oh, that one.
Yes, yes, thank you.
I'm only one info is about the views that keep coming from these stage compactors. There's no compact, What they're doing is going to create even more people. Sorry about that. Now, I have a lot of information here, which, sorry, lots of information here, which is no way going to be seen by this committee today, because I didn't realise when I first collected it together, it was only a 4-minute job. Now, I'll get it together in one quick couple of sentences. Now, these pictures, what you've just shown on there, with Wogan Road and Wogan Lane, are fictitious. Now, I have a load of pictures here showing the views that people actually get from what's going on at the moment before they even increase the infrastructure, buildings, and bringing more people into the area. Now, I have had a solicitor bring me back today from Age UK.
Sorry, David, if I can
The police as well.
if I can just interrupt,
Sorry,
you're not allowed to sort of table
I
any,
can't tell what you're saying.
you're not allowed to table any papers at the meeting.
What are you saying?
You're not allowed to table any information, any papers, any documents.
So,
No, you're not allowed to table.
not sorry about this.
You're not allowed to hand any papers around. To make-
No, I'm not allowed to have papers around. No, what I'm saying is I'm going to use it for a reference.
Oh, that's fine, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to use it for reference. I just told you, I've got a paperwork there,
Yeah.
and I won't go to what do you call it.
Yeah, go on.
We'll get back to it, you know. Now, as you came, the police have informed me to inform you lot at this meeting to request a proper meeting with the stags who's in charge of all this stuff that's going off, and the Mansfield Council who's in charge of planning and everything, because there's a lack of parking. Now, the parking what's just been portrayed there will no way take all the traffic that's going to be going in and out of these jobs what they're building, and the ones who've already got, you can't go even now. Now, I keep getting booked in for 2 hours more, sometimes 2 hours more. It's restricting my access by grants that were signed by the Duke of Portland and my family in 1953. Now, obviously there's going to be other objections about this. Now, the main thing I'm concerned about is every time anything goes up under the planning, false pictures are portrayed to show to get the planning through. Now, this Wogan Lane job and this Wogan Road job there, that has no relevance on the reality as soon as September kicks off, when the football season kicks in and the schools start. Now, I would like to get to see somebody personally and privately, and it has been recommended by the police and Age UK, their solicitor. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. I don't want to be passing all these photographs and paperwork around and all this stuff, because you're not going to have the time to do it. And I do acknowledge that the paperwork you sent me just say I only have 4 minutes. And that's basically what I have to say. The abuse coming out to people, and you're going to have some more moments anyway about it. I'll leave it with you anyway, and if you want to get back to me to have a further meeting with me, the stags, and the Mansfield District Council somewhere privately to deal with this abuse.
Yeah, thank you, David, if you can just.
That's me finished.
Yeah, thank you, David, you can just remain there in case there's any questions. Would you be willing to take any questions from members of the planning committee? Would you, any questions to David from members? No questions, thank you, David, for your presentation, thank you.
Have I done?
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant.
The next speaker is Andrew Davidson. Andrew.
Thank you very much for putting up with me anyway, you. I know I'm a difficult person.
Brilliant, thank you very
Have
much.
a good day.
Thank you, thank you.
Great.
Yeah. You've got 4 minutes, David, Andrew, 4 minutes, Andrew, from when you commence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been repetitive, because there seems to be a bit of a thread building, it'll be about parking. Along the traffic, cumulative aspect. Parking. Scanned through the document again today, obviously, which is why I got it right now. There's a couple of comments in terms of, as you said, I think, sorry, put it down, mentioned, authority come back with various reassuring noise and numbers and sort of increased capacity and so on and so on. Well, personally, I'm not seeing it from what we can see. There's all sorts of statements in the planning document. Established arrangements in terms of the school. There's obviously an understanding there that the school will continue to use the car park. And you kind of said a couple of times tonight, it's a very informal car park, which it is. And by the time it's marked out, it'll have 70 spaces. A lot of people have taken that to mean there's going to be more parking. I've personally counted 72 cars out that car park for school now. And there's still 50 or 60 down Morgan Road and up Morgan Lane. There's then the argument on, yes, but stags are only using it for this. Well, it's not extra, it's just for stags. So who's using the existing facility now? If stags are moving into this, don't get me wrong, I'm a season ticket holder. I've got no axe to grind with MTFC. But if they're saying the implication of this thing, this won't have much impact. And I sort of think, well, if there's not really much impact, who's going to be using the building? But it doesn't make sense to me. So does that good point make sense to you? In terms of additional cumulative traffic up and down, for a very simplistic point, and I'm sure there's others in the room who would echo this. I stand and look at traffic up and down. It's not, it's a first world problem. I get that. But you look at traffic up and down, and then somebody says, "Oh, that's it. Agreed. We're going to build a new one." I got, I can't get down the street now. It's the issue why parking keeps coming back. It serves as being a common thread. Over the next week, when the kids are back next week, and again, it's not. But you sit in the corner and cry about it. I've become accustomed to it over the last 10, 15, 20 years since it's gotten gradually busier and busier. It's a genuine problem for people trying to get on and off Morgan Lane. Some of which are going to the school, some of which are going to stags. They just want to get up and down the road and off the estate sometimes, I don't see anything in here that reassures me that there isn't going to be a cumulative effect. There's 200 and odd, I wrote it down, so there's 200 and odd pupils at school. You can work out how many of the traffic lectures. Stags currently, there's a fairly sort of comfortable, I think, arrangement most of the time with the use of the existing area, which is great for the cost. Don't get me wrong, all for it, marvel. But I can't square the circle that says we're going to put a new facility in, it's not going to matter.
30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. I mean, that's again, I don't want to get bang on and be more repetitive about it, but I think that you'll find that that's the common thread in most people's hesitancy, shall we say, rather than outright banging and taking pitching the pitchforks on this project. It's just genuinely the impact that we don't get down. I don't know how you get an emergency vehicle down the road sometimes.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for your presentation. Do I have any questions from members of the planning committee to Andrew?
Simon. His name's Simon.
Simon. Any questions?
Yes, councillor Mike.
First of all, Simon, thank you for coming down, so look forward to you and presentation. Just one question really. Did the football people give you a consultation, a note or any thought what they intend to do?
For this,
Yes,
it's a long time since they started. There's nobody probably needs to tell this group. So I'm think it's from memory. I don't remember personally. It's not like I've got a road through the door and saying, we are intending to do this. Like a lot of these things, I think in practice, whatever should happen, in practice, it tends to sort of, somebody has read something or somebody on the internet or somebody's heard, and then eventually people get to know something's going to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's, you know, the notices that have to be placed and all that sort of thing. From memory, I think they happened later. And the sort of things that form part of this document. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
That's just from my recollection.
Yeah, that's no worries. Thank you.
Uh, councillor Rees.
So thank you for the presentation. I think there's been quite a few objections from different residents and people in the area. What other things have come up other than just parking? You probably know that parking tends to be Nottinghamshire County Council. But what other things have come up in objections?
Well, you've got the light, obviously, from the front lights. You've got noise, potentially. I mean, I can just as an example, I mean, I'm the fan for a second. So, at the moment, it's actually bizarre, quite convenient for it. Because if I'm out in the gardens, we all have, you know, the last few months, I can hear them training. So I might think, I take off and I'm walking out and say, look. You know, I can hear them halfway down Holborn Lake. You get where I'm going with that. If they're over there, I don't mind. You know what? Footballers can sometimes be like, but it's volume. Yes, it's smack opposite, it's just smack opposite school. No, I mean, I'm not proving. Well, you know, it's, so there's the noise. Again, for me, it's the biggest thing is the park. You know, we haven't got all the drawings and everything, but there's a one where it shows like a turn in and a turn out for a coach. I don't know if you've seen, but it's like a bit of a banana shape, which is why a coach will turn into the entrance and back out again. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, we're not supposed to be getting there, but that's all right, unless my car's in front of the house when they want to do it. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work. You know, it's just, it's the sort of, I think the biggest thing for me, I can't speak, the biggest thing is obviously the parking because it's become an issue independent of this. Now, I appreciate that whoever's put this together on behalf of Stags, whether it's Steve or whoever, I don't know, it's admirable exploring all of that. I get that. But for people who are sort of looking at it as, yeah, that's great, it's a great thing, it's a marvellous facility. But I have to, if I go out, it's the silliest of things. Sorry, I'm rambling. But the silliest of things. If I go to Tesco, or it gets to lunchtime, I'm thinking we're ready to go and do some shopping. Yeah. I don't want to get it any more than 1 o'clock, because I'm not going to get back down the street. You see what I mean?
Thank you, Simon, for your response.
Yes, sorry.
So it's okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry.
I've got another question from councillor Cox, anything okay, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Keelan. I probably should have brought this in, the last speaker, but, picking my granddaughter up from the school, it certainly isn't, anything like is on the beach. And, I couldn't get anywhere near the school. So, I take it that when, and I have an issue with, parking and doing outside of school in Marlow. Yeah, it's a daily thing. It's a major problem. And, but my point is that I take it that the car over driveway is when school's in and out. Not, yes, I touch wood. I personally have an experience with car over driveway. The problem again is that by the time you've got cars on both sides, Yeah.
I understand, and again, I really should have asked that point, the previous speaker.
Can I pick up on something new, do you mind?
Well, I'm just gonna add on to, do you think, in your honest opinion, that the additional car parking that's been offered here during school time would alleviate some of the problem on there?
No, I've been straight as I've been telling you additional parking.
Right, obviously, I've not heard anything from, the county councils, the DRE, so obviously, it doesn't seem to be a problematic county.
Yeah.
But, so that was that, I think we were to ask you questions, but if you want to make a point of preservation of what I've said, then.
Yeah, but just something, I'm not. And initially, I said things, someone spoke about, was it published, was it put out, was it? So people, also moving into now, would say, oh, I've heard this and heard that, I spoke to this guy, I've never heard of them chat from the start, and he said, yeah, it was Chinese. Initially, that's, I think why I'm most disappointed, or I'm starting to focus on the market, and I said lots of it, in response to you, is there anything out? So I'll stick, because otherwise, you need to know. So I'll stick to that, because of all that was that I was read. But I was just kind of disappointed, because the first time I heard about they're going to enhance the car park. On some of the drawings, I would have gone all the way to the, it's difficult if you're not been up there. But it is all rubbish around the side, rough track part of them. People get along, it's John Carson every day. Regardless of the fact that people are just parking in front of it. But you still can't get there in the street. And I'm looking at it thinking, this is great. And in my head, I went, right, okay, so so if you went all the way to the some units that back on, so it used to be old school. Way before my time. If you went all the way up to that fence, you end up proposing to put trees in. Yeah, the square devil. All the way to the, almost all the way to the existing tree line, which unfortunately you can't do that now because you're going to make building. You're going to be in reception at that stage. You could have enhanced that car park. You could have put another 100 spaces. I just felt it's kind of missed the trick in terms of what could have been done with the plan. We have space. I appreciate that's a school problem, not against it.
Thank you, Simon, for your response. Councillor Cox, are there any further questions from planning committee members? Thanks, Simon.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the planning committee to the case officer, Dan? Councillor Stevenson.
Can you just clarify, Dan, that I recognise the formalising the car park from 70 spaces, but on the plans, I believe there was an additional car parking further along the road. Is that correct? Because just that might just alleviate some of the concerns in terms of these parking spaces. Just clarify the other section and how many spaces there are there, please, and who can use those spaces.
Thank you, councillor. So yes, there's a few things here, and I think the second speaker really clarified a lot of the issues, and I commend them for the clarity on that. I think there's some distinction, I think, between. But I'll just start with the point about the number of spaces, and I'll just clarify some of the points that the application can consider, because some of it's an existing problem, and I'm conscious of that. So if I what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in. So this car park here. So this is the car park the school currently use. That's got so the proposed layout is for 70 spaces. Now I noted that obviously there was reference at one point said they counted 72 on the car parks existing. I can't. That's the first I've heard of. Obviously, the first I've heard of that figure tonight. So I can when we can only assess the information before us. I think it's. The point I make on the number of cars in the existing space is that the school can continue to use that, but I think it's possible if you crammed a load of cars onto that car park during pickup time that you could fit slightly more spaces in. But it's contingent upon everybody in that every parent that stops at the school using that space as efficiently as they can. If you get a couple of people that park in a row inconsiderately, that means at that point you effectively are relying on people, humans being in all their collective goodwill, parking in a way that's not going to undermine that site in itself. That's a generous assumption, I would say. So this time, on average, whilst again it might be theoretically possible to cram 100 cars on there, it's what's likely to happen day in, day out. The new car park in itself, that's mainly to accommodate the football clubs. That's an extra 30 spaces, and then you've obviously got all the existing spaces on the existing academy, which isn't on these plans because it's an existing facility. So there'll be an uplift of 30 spaces for the football club. For Mansfield, for the what's listed as car park one, if I just zoom in on it, just to clarify on what this sort of crazy boomerang thing, this is just what's called a tracking plan. So it shows how, it's just to show how the coach would move as it's basically just, it's a technical highways drawing. It's just to show how a coach would move in and out. It's not saying that the coach would occupy all of that at any one time. It's just if you just think the coach would park there, and it would move in effectively, if it's reverse parked, it would then back in, out, and then down. That's the idea for that. It's not to say that the coach is going to be regularly obstructing it like that. It makes it look a lot worse than it is. A lot of the concern I'm reading about is obviously the development can only mitigate itself. And unfortunately, we do what we can in terms of mitigating an existing problem, but this car park won't make the school parking any worse. That problem won't be materially worsened. It's about making sure that this development doesn't make itself worse. I don't know if I hope that's answered your question. I can pick up any follow-ups if needed.
No, I think that does answer it, because I think a lot of the concern is, well, with the increased footfall of the footballers and coaches and that type of thing coming into the site, those 70 spaces would be used. Well, actually, what you're saying is there's an additional 30 that would primarily be used for the players, for the coaches, and that type of thing. So, like you say, the idea isn't that it fixes the problems, because that no planning application is going to do that, but it should mitigate the problems that potentially arise as a result of this application. I think is the point.
Thank you, Jim. Any further questions from the planning committee members to the case officer now? Councillor Tempest Special.
Thanks, Chair. Dan, can you just clarify the times of opening? Because it probably is me being a bit sick, but I think it's not currently 9 till 5. Sorry, yeah. And then it goes on page 24, the proposed operating hours are 9 till 10 o'clock on a Sunday as well. When I look at the construction times, when construction can be allowed, that clearly doesn't go anywhere near 10 o'clock at night. So I just want to clarify, are there any conditions that are either there or that we could input that cut down the time, particularly on a Sunday night?
So the general, sorry, is that, I don't know if that's, so as far as operating hours go, so the proposed, so there were references to 9 to 5. I think some of that might be, I probably could have been clearer in the way I worded it in the report. There's a quote from the report that basically says it was talking about 9 till 5. I think some that was basically saying, I think that the use of the club would be comparatively limited, although there is opening hours listed from 9 till 5, so it doesn't stop. So the overall opening hours Monday to Sunday, it says 9 till 10, so 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. So that's an overall. I mean, currently it's something like I think it's 7:30. The academy is something like 7:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the evening. I think my point was more like the 9 till 5 point was this. Is that the period you would anticipate the use of that site to be limited? The concentration of use would be 9 till, or be 5 till 10. As a general principle, obviously I know generally speaking the noise, not working hours or operational hours of the pitch, mainly sort of Saturday, Sunday, sort of main, or bank holidays, the main concern. We have, these were the proposed operating hours. That was proposed by the applicant. The noise impact assessment assesses the proposal on that basis. Then there's obviously conditions to mitigate flood lighting and acoustic mitigation. Environmental health have reviewed that, and that hasn't and that didn't lead to, there was no evidence to suggest that that would be unacceptable in terms of the impact. The current academy has 7:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night, which still it starts early, it finishes a bit early, but it also starts a lot earlier. So this is kind of almost trading 90 minutes here and there. I think the general principle, I mean, the agent did sort of explain to me that the actual use of that sort of Sunday evening slot will be comparatively limited to sort of like, I think it was particular once a season match, like, you know, could be a women's football club final or something like that. I think the actual use was proposed to be limited, but it's obviously we've assessed the application on the basis of what the applicants applied for. And we can only obviously assess that impact based on the evidence that we have.
Thank you, Dan, for the detailed explanation. Any further questions from members of the planning committee? Thank you, Mitchell.
Thanks. So could we impose a condition, particularly for Sunday nights, to cut that hours down? There's not enough 3D pictures in the whole of Mansfield. Debdale is full all of the time, would be all the time if you opened it 20 hours a day. And that is possibly the case here. Could we impose a condition to cut down, particularly Sunday nights?
Over to you, Dan.
Sorry about that. If members, what members would have to consider again, I think in theory members have the ability to impose different conditions to what officers are recommended. That's within your proviso to do. All I can advise is those hours have been assessed. I think again, this is something that planning can't control, is that the intended use is predominantly by Mansfield Town. This isn't an unfettered, the predominant approach for this isn't some unfettered commercial, it's some unfettered leisure use. I don't think there'd be many sort of teams outside of proper organised football teams that could make use of a huge 11 by 11 football court. This isn't like a 5-a-side, but I think members could impose an earlier operating time of 8:30. But again, obviously you need to be able to have that. Obviously, any condition can be appealed, but as obviously we've got technical evidence with the application. Environmental Health haven't raised an objection. There are independent statutory noise controls beyond what we've recommended in terms of acoustic mitigation and lighting. But again, we can only assess what the evidence was, and there wasn't evidence to support an earlier time.
Councillor Cannon.
Dan, this is to you. Is it my understanding that Notts County Council Highways have not put in any objections? So all we're here to do is about the actual planning of this building.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So it's the planning decision as a whole. So we're assessing the proposal on its merits as a whole, and whether the land use can effectively manage what is proposed. Parking, obviously, I can completely understand for residents why, but obviously for them, it's going to be one of the most important issues. And unfortunately, for something like for us as planners, we can weight issues appropriately, and obviously that's what we've done. We've looked at conditions and considerations, and we look to mitigate the impacts of that development as a whole. Obviously, again, parking, noise, they're individual aspects, but it's like a bit like a matrix, you know, you weigh up different considerations, and if there's anything that sort of tips a balance of sort of significant unacceptable impact, that's when we put conditions in. And I mean, so obviously members can residents pick up on bits that they consider to be important, and conditions there to mitigate that. I think what I would say is my recommendation looks at the proposal, obviously makes a recommendation to committee, and then it's down to committee to sort of assess whether they sort of, in their view, that is a recommendation they would go with, noting we look at the evidence that we submit and then form a recommendation on that basis.
Thank you, Dan. Any further, Councillor Moxon?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to go back to the car park issue. Just want to clarify. So obviously if this all goes through, the land's going to transfer ownership to Mansfield Town, so they'll be in control of the land, albeit that there's a condition that says that the school can use that car park. But what would happen if there was some kind of major event or something on at that training facility let's say mid-afternoons when school's about to come out, and so that car park's already full with visitors that are non-school related, what's going to happen then? Because obviously the school can't then use that facility to turn around.
Thank you, Cass. I think it is a genuine tension, and I think it's something that is there isn't a unique planning condition that I can craft that says that there shall be no, that there shall be no like school games during school pickup times. I think that would be a condition. I don't think it would meet sort of the legal test for planning conditions. I think as a general principle, there is a theoretical possibility that could happen. How likely is that? Probably not so that substantial. And I think it's something that, as far as it goes, it's something where the school and Mansfield Town would have to manage that themselves. And I think that's something that you can encourage. But I think it's about probability and frequency of impact. It's whether it poses into, because unfortunately, no planner likes to sort of talk about on-street parking because we always want to think we can manage every scenario. But as for the Highway Authority, as Councillor Callaghan sort of asked me whether they had an objection, and obviously I have discussed this with them at some length, and the sort of the conclusion is that the proposal on its current merits, despite those possibilities, we're not anywhere near the threshold that we could sustain a refusal even on that basis, and I don't think there's really any conditions that we could reasonably word that could control that. I think it's the general assessment is that possibility is unlikely. I think it's the frequency of which will be very low. I think that's all we can really conclude. And obviously I would also note that part of obviously this isn't a complete reassurance, but obviously that's not the only car park. The main principle is you've got a new car park of 30 spaces plus Mansfield Town has 100 spaces on the existing site. So the odds are that a match would use all 230 spaces. Seems probabilities are all we can really look at in that context.
Thank you, Matt. Any further questions? Do I have a proposer and seconder for the officer recommendation? And Councillor Howard Callaghan and Councillor Stevenson. Can we put it to the vote? Please. All those in favour? Got a proposal and a second.
That's 12 answer.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. You got another question. Yeah, I asked that. There was now. Yeah, debate them.
Yes.
Yeah, please. Please. And then, Councillor Jeffs.
Yeah, just a comment that I understand the residents' concerns because I have similar problems in my own ward with school parking. And I completely understand their concerns. However, it feels that the concerns are related to the school, not to the actual proposal by the football club. So on that basis, it feels that I will be supporting this application because it's the school and the school frequently drop off that appears to be causing the problem, and that's already a problem. And my view is that this additional facility is not likely to make that problem worse. It won't make it any better, but I can't see how it would significantly make it worse. And I do feel for residents, because I have similar problems with my ward, but we had a planning application that similar nature, we couldn't turn it down because of the effect of school parking. So that's just a point that I wanted to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. The Councillor Swain.
Chair, it's just a comment that Councillor Nelson raised when if there was a major event, at times when schools are coming out. I think it would be really courteous if the football took to inform schools in advance, just so we can pass on information. I agree, it does tend to be the fan schools. I don't think there's any school in the area that doesn't have issues with parking or drop off and pick up times. Chair.
Thank you. Any further points to raise and Councillor Thomas Mitchell?
Thanks, Chair. My main concern is the timings and the floodlights, to be fair. To me, and we discussed it here very briefly, that perhaps I should propose that condition of particularly Sunday nights. This is a country lane basically, and it's going to have 18-metre floodlights with a 4-metre, which is, I worked it out, it's nearly half of that bit of wood there. Floodlights, 4 of them, that presumably going to pump out a fair bit of light pollution, potentially at 10 o'clock at night or up to 10 o'clock at night. Sports England initially turned it down because there wasn't enough community use or weren't able to support it because there wasn't enough community use. And now that there is community use, that tells me that it is going to be used as much as dead day, which is every single minute of the day. Somebody said something about, well, it's a full-size pitch, so you wouldn't fill it, but you do because they'll split it up into 4 pitches and then 2 pitches, etc. So it will be used. And for me, 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, when kids should be going to bed, and there's noise, there's whistling from the football referees, there's the lights, I think it's too late, particularly on Sunday nights.
Any further points to raise?
Just a quick point for me. I think if we are going to have an alternative motion to include a condition, we just need to be very clear what that condition is going to state.
Councillor Tempest, we have to put words forward for a condition, additional conditions. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I would, so we can work out the wording, but restrict, particularly on a Sunday night, to 8:30 as it is now, unless anybody else has an earlier time or a different time, and potentially actually every day of the week, but certainly Sunday nights. Currently 8:30, going up to 10. For me, that's too late.
Right, a vote on the application, and then we can have another vote. Separate vote on the condition. Yeah, we'll do the vote with the suggested new condition put on councillor Tempest's petition.
So do you mean as far as like what the wording would look like? I think obviously we need to be mindful about what the assessment was based on. I think as far as the wording goes, it sounds like the main concern is Sunday nights. So the wording would be something like, you know, the hours of operation shall be like 9 till 10 on, you know, 9 AM till 10 PM Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday, and it should be something like there should be no, you know, no and 0900 to 2030 on Sundays and public holidays. Something along those lines, I think, would be most likely if you were looking to change the recommendation based on what has that. If the particular concern is Sunday, then the limiting the intervention in the wording to that particular day would be most appropriate. But obviously, I can only make a recommendation based on what I've looked at. So.
Right, can we have to say something else, Richard?
Well, just because I just want to read that, just so it makes sense to me, it's not just anybody else. Although the applicant has indicated that weekend is more likely to concentrate between approximately 10 AM and 1 PM, it should be noted the existing academy is only open until 2030, 8:30 in the evening, on Saturday, Sunday and public holidays, but also opens at 7:30 in the morning. These facilities are acknowledged to be open later, but also open 90 minutes later, open for longer. So would we just copy that and basically Saturday, Sunday and public holidays, 8:30?
Yeah, I think we get a bit mixed up here. Before members agree to the additional condition, can we just see what the members are happy or not to put that additional condition in, or whether they would prefer to leave that additional condition out? All those in favour, all those in favour of the additional condition put forward by Councillor Tempest Mitchell, please raise your hand.
Can I just clarify what exactly it is, because it's changed 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
There's no secondary, is it?
Richard's going to read it out again. Thank you, Richard.
I'll need a seconder for a start, but I suggest that, and I'm looking at page 24, proposed opening hours 9 till 10, Monday to Sunday, although the applicant has indicated that weekend use is more likely to be concentrated between 10 AM and 1 PM. It should be noted the existing academy is only open until 8:30 on Saturday, Sunday and public holidays. So my suggestion, and I'll need a second, which I might not get, would be that it can only open till 8:30 on Saturday, Sunday, public holidays, the same as it is now.
Thank you, Richard. Do you have a second to Richard's proposal? Councillor Watson, a second to Richard's proposal. Can we put that to the vote? All those in favour of this proposal? Got 3, Jodie. Yeah, we've only got 3. So that proposal, that's final. Can we have we've got a proposal and a seconder for the officer recommendation. Can we put that to the vote? All those in favour of the officer recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Got 7 in favour. Any abstentions? We've got 2 abstentions. Thank you. So therefore, planning application 2024 S1774 has been approved. Thank you. If we can move on to the next planning application, reference 2026 0215 LBW regulation 3 application, list of building consent application, the creation of a new safe level access path between modern and Victoria areas of Mansfield Cemetery. So to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair.
So I would just be 1 second to the things. So.
Thank you. Yeah, you can present your report, please.
Thank you. I've got a few information to update before I go into the assessment of the application. Just wait for the slide to be right here. Okay. So apologies for the incorrect site location plan that's been attached on the committee report to refer to this site location plan on the slides, which is the correct one. As mentioned in the previous applications, there's the reference to the new NPPF. The reference to December 2024 NPPF will be replaced by the assessment of August 2026 NPPF. In the report, the paragraphs 212 and 213 of the NPPF December 2024 will be replaced which is in the principle of development section, will be replaced with paragraph 1 of HE6 and paragraph 2 of HE4 of the NPPF August 2026 respectively. The requirements are considered the same and therefore these amendments do not affect the assessment of the proposal. The application site is within the Grade 2 listed Mansfield Cemetery off Forest Hill and to the west of Nottingham Road. The site is a small opening between a stone wall to the east of the Mansfield Cemetery, separating modern cemeteries to the south and the Victorian cemeteries to the north. Pedestrian access with a short ramp of broken concrete and stone is currently evident on site. So this photo is taken from the
Victorian cemeteries, so it's looking towards the bordered cemeteries, and you can see that that small gap is where the site is and where the existing small ramp is. So the proposal seeks to create a new safe level access path at this location to allow for access through the existing gap in the stone wall. Conservation officer consulted and did not raise an objection to the proposal. The Garden Trust has also been consulted and did not wish to comment on the proposal at this stage. However, they have advised that while it does not appear that any excavations is intended, it is important to verify whether any murals may be disturbed by proposed drawings. As such, a condition has been recommended to report any impacts on the murals to the local planning authority. Overall, it is recommended to grant listed building consent for the application subject to conditions.
Thank you for your report. Any questions to the case officer from members of the committee? No questions. No one proposer. And second, the please, Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Coxon. Into debate mode, any points from members in debate mode? Can we put it to the vote, all those in favour? Unanimous showing, thank you. Right, famous, the next item on the agenda is planning application 2026-0363/4 regulation 3 application for the provision of line roads of the rail part of the town hall marketplace Mansfield. The officers make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a few additional information and updated comments received to this application. Updated comments from the Historic England has been received on the 13th of August to remove a draft watermark of the initial comments. So there's no actual changes to the response and it doesn't affect the assessment of the proposal. And the amended proposed southwest elevation plan is received on the 18th of August. The conservation officer and NCC Historic Buildings were consulted on this amended drawing and confirmed on 19th of August that they have no objections to the amended render specification being proposed on the drawings. As such, this drawing will replace the original proposed southwest elevation drawing that was approved on the committee report and condition 3, which relates to which is a commencement condition relating to render specification is now redundant and will be removed. And as mentioned, the reference to the December 2024 MPPF will be replaced by the assessment of the August 2026 MPPF. The application site relates to the grade 2 style listed Old Town Hall located to the southwest of the marketplace within the marketplace conservation area. The proposal seeks to implement a line render to the lower half of the southwest, which is the rear elevation of the Old Town Hall. The proposed render is to a prominent facade of the Old Town Hall adjacent to the new Memorial Garden and is considered a visual improvement and enhancement to the heritage asset, its setting and public realm, and therefore considered acceptable in principle. As I mentioned just now, we've received amended drawings and the conservation officer and NCC Historic Building is now satisfied with the amended render specification being proposed. The applicant has also submitted additional information regarding the fixing of the steel lead at the base of the render, proposed position of the lead flashing at the top of the render, and the color of the cables in render, which are all considered appropriate by the conservation officer and will be controlled by conditions recommended. In terms of visual amenity, the proposal is considered as a visual improvement and enhancement to the character and appearance of the public realm and its surrounding area. Overall, it is recommended to grant planning permission for this application subject to conditions.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions from members of the case officer? No questions. No questions. Then over proposal second proposal. Lots of hands. Councillor Swain, Councillor Coxton. Any which be raised in debate motion. Move to the vote and show of hands, please. Thank you. Unanimous. We'll move on to the next. Planning application reference 2026-03-64. Exactly the same as the previous one, but it's for listed building consent. Make your report, make presentation, please.
Thank you. As mentioned by Chair, this is the relevant listed building consent application, the last planning application for the rendering works to the Old Town Hall. So the site context and the assessment in relation to heritage conservation has already been presented, and I will not go into great details. In terms of update information, it's pretty much the same with the last application. Changes to the NPP framework and paragraphs 212 and 213 of the NPPF December 2024 in the principle of development section will be replaced with paragraph 1 of paragraph 1 of HB6 and paragraph 2 of HB4 of the NPPF August 2026 respectively. The requirements are considered the same and do not affect the assessment of the proposal. As mentioned just now, an amended proposal plus elevation was received, and it's also been submitted to this application, and it's also been looked at by the conservation officer and NCC historic buildings, and they have confirmed that they are happy with the specification of those drawings, which is the same as the last application. As such, this updated drawing will replace the original approved drawing on the committee report, and condition 3 is now redundant and will be removed. All other information submitted to the previous relevant planning application are also submitted to this listed building consent application and are considered appropriate. The same conditions are attached to this application. Overall, it is recommended to grant listed building consent for the application subject to conditions.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions from members of the planning committee to the case officer? Do I propose that and second? Councillor Callahan, second, Councillor Alves. Are we going to debate mode? Any questions raised? No comments to debate. Do we have anybody to the vote? There is all those in favour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, you don't. We only change subscription. Item 9, planning appeal decisions from the 7th of July 2026 to the 8th of August 2026. Can I ask members if they bring the decision report period 7 for that period? All those in favour? Item 10, this is the exciting bit, appendices of Human Rights Act and Youth Clusters, appendices 1 and 2. Members to note that, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you.